Sterling's situation at Manchester City? Does that translate into England starting places in the summer? Foden's clearly overtaking Sterling, I think, at City at the moment.
Okay, now on the pod, time for On the Plane, our weekly feature with the illogical title that looks at how the England squad is shaping up ahead of Euro 2020. This week, our focus on just one man. That's Manchester City's Phil Foden. We're joined by Sam Lee, our City writer. He's first name on the City team sheet at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, he just gives them so much. And this was what fans were crying out for earlier in the season when things weren't going quite so well. But even now, they found their rhythm. And, you know, as Guardiola says, it's 1,000 passes and they're strangling games, as we saw against Villa last week and Spurs on Sunday. Even when they're playing so well, he can take the ball, swivel, beat 2 or 3 men and then carry the ball 15, 20 yards up the pitch before you've even realised what's happened. And yeah, he gives them so much on the pitch, and he's a threat in front of goals or assists. He's, you know, whatever they do between now and the end of the season, Champions League wise, he's going to be huge for that.
Adam, the way he almost led the assault and the waves of attack with some sort of swagger and I'm going to drive this forward against an obdurate defence that was holding out for so long. When I was watching him yesterday, I thought, I wonder if he is now in possession of a starting role for England, in a sense that England might find themselves against a lot of opposition having to do that, and he almost looks tailor-made for it. And we've said on here in previous weeks about Mount being a nailed-on starter and Rice and Henderson, etc., etc. But talk about playing set yourself into form. I just think I love Foden. That's all I want to say.
No, I think you're right. And this is why, you know, when we were talking about Mount a few weeks ago, and I was just saying, you know, it might be okay if he doesn't start every single game because we have lots of really, really talented players. I think quite an interesting thing that's developing is obviously with Sterling's situation at Manchester City. Does that translate into England starting places in the summer? Foden's clearly overtaken Sterling, I think, at City at the moment. Does Gareth Southgate feel the same way? But then you have to think in terms of styles of play. Well, are England going to have as much of the ball as Manchester City usually do? And how does that impact the way that Phil Foden is able to influence a game? Does it mean that he's left, you know, I suppose, Jack, like a little bit like Joe Cole used to be at times with England, where you have this fantastic technical player on the pitch, but the team's playing in a style that doesn't necessarily bring the best out of him. And I know we said that about so many players with England over the years, but this is why it becomes a huge challenge for Gareth Southgate, because he's got some immensely technically gifted players now. And is he a coach that's capable of devising in a very, very short space of time now, a system that can maximise the talents of Grealish and Mount and Sancho and Rashford and Kane and Foden, all these fantastic players who to me seem really well suited to a possession-based style, but I'm not sure if that was what Gareth Southgate will do in the summer.
I wonder whether Guardiola's decision to move Foden into wide area basically over the last year or so has actually been very good for Southgate, because Foden started the last 2 games against Albania and Poland in the last international break playing in a wide role, meaning that it wasn't a choice between Foden or Mount because they both played, with Sterling on the other side and Harry Kane up front. And I imagine that the England team that starts against Croatia in June will look quite a lot like that. You know, maybe you'd have Rashford in for Sterling. I don't imagine you'd have Grealish. Maybe you'd have Sancho in, but I don't think so. So I do think Foden and Mount can work together. And to be honest, I'm sure, you know, people always used to talk about Foden as a midfielder, but I think that wide position actually works out really well for him. It gets him 1v1 against players. He can take people on. He can run in behind because he's quicker than he looks. And I think maybe that's the answer.
And if he is wide, Sam, that he's ahead of Sterling at club level, so you would assume that wide lefty, or, you know, wide of a front three, however you want to do it, he could be ahead of Sterling at international level. I think Rashford at the moment can be very hit and miss, really. So you would argue that he's probably ahead of Rashford as well. And Grealish isn't fit at the moment. So if you are looking at him in a wide role or part of a front three or whatever, he's ahead of all his competitors, isn't he?
I suppose so in those circumstances. And the thing with Rashford, it always seems to pick up a knock on like a Thursday night and you think he's never going to play at the weekend. Then he does, and he picks up another knock. He just keeps playing. So you wonder and you hope that they don't catch up with him. But I mean, yeah, if you're comparing it to those kind of players, then you would say he's first choice. And yeah, like Jack was saying, he's just so clinical and dangerous up front. Like it's a bit of a masterstroke from Guardiola, really. And part of it is because Guardiola, he's already got one type of Foden player in that midfield, and he doesn't want two. He always wants one player like Gundogan or David Silva just to kind of sit and control the game, get the ball and give the ball and pass it off and let the others kind of dribble and carry it forward and search. He doesn't want two De Bruynes. And unfortunately for Foden, that's why he's not playing in midfield, because they've already got one. But the beauty of it is he's just put him in the forward line. And all these abilities we're talking about, they just fit perfectly.
David, do you think he's been fully forgiven by Southgate for what happened in Iceland? Do you think he's past that question. Point, doesn't care? Is it over?
Yeah, I do. I think it's completely banished, but very much not absent from the mind of Southgate. Discipline and respect, behaviour is really important, and it's one of the factors he will have undoubtedly considered in the recent party incident where James Maddison was, etc. We've seen Mason Greenwood was involved on the Iceland front. Kyle Walker had some issues early in lockdown.
We might be here a while if we go through them.
Harry Maguire, various indiscretions. Jordan Pickford. Yeah, I'm going through the entire squad now. But with Southgate, it's very much how they respond to it. And with many of those players I listed, they've responded really well. From what we heard at the time, and we reported it, Foden had shown immediate contrition, and Southgate was taking soundings from him back at Manchester City and was really impressed. I think there was a bit of a rough period with Mason Greenwood, which he thankfully seems to have emerged through. He signed a new contract. Things are moving in the right direction now. Wish him really well too. But Foden, I've heard absolutely no concerns about from the England camp since that incident. We've talked for so many years about an England player to unpick a defence. Do we finally have this player that we've all been searching for so long, if England play the right way?
Well, if all I could think of right at the very start when everybody was eulogising about him, and Sam in particular about what he's done at Manchester City was, that absolutely guarantees that he will start on the bench for England. That I mean, you've just seen it so many times before with the game changer. But what I would say, in having watched England for a very long time, as you point out, David, going all the way back to 1982, I can't think of a time when Southgate has had more potential game changers.